Hello, this is Dr. Dave Maslach talking to you about reciprocity.com. The E is written with a 3, and in this particular video, I want to talk about dual career couples in academia as a PhD student or going into graduate school. So if you don't know me, I'm actually a professor of innovation strategy and entrepreneurship, and I'm trying to build this platform to be as helpful as I possibly can to other people that are in grad school or thinking of doing research in grad school. So being a dual career couple in academia, it has a lot of challenges. So I went through grad school. I did grad school from 2003. So I finished my undergrad in engineering in 2003, and I went until 2012. So I did a master's and then finally a PhD, and then did some postdoctoral research. My wife at the time, we got married in 2005, and she was a veterinarian. She became a veterinarian in 2005. So we've been dealing with, it's now 2018, we've been dealing with the dual career couple, or is the dual body problem in academia for a long time now. We've got 2 wonderful kids, a couple of dogs, and a cat that's running around the house. So I just wanted to actually talk about being a dual career couple in academia. And for those of you who are sort of thinking about that and sort of wondering what's it like and how do you actually deal with being a dual career couple, it is challenging, right? So that's the first thing I want to point out. Just relax. It is challenging, and it gets a little bit crazy every once in a while with managing your time and effort. Probably the sort of most challengingest thing is just kind of that coordinating aspect of it. But there's a lot of different advantages that go along with being a dual career couple. So it's really, it's quite fun. So I'm going to sort of talk to you about these advantages and disadvantages of being a dual career couple. So the first one, obviously, is just managing your schedule. So actually, as an academic, it's a little bit easier. It's starting to get a little bit more challenging now that my kids are getting older. They're 6 and 8, and as well as my academic schedule is getting a little bit more tighter. I'm trying to put out these videos, for example, to help you guys out. Going to different conferences and things like that, and prioritizing teaching and service responsibilities and all that kind of stuff. So it does get a little bit challenging, and every once in a while I'll admit I do make a mistake, and I'll be like, oh God, I missed that, or something goofy will happen along the way, and that's just kind of part of it. You just kind of have to take it for a grain of salt. I'll tell you one thing that has really worked for us in terms of being a dual career couple. My wife works pretty long hours. So generally she goes in at work at about 7 in the morning. She leaves the house at about 6:30. And then she comes back at anywhere between 6:30 and 8, depending on what's going on. So because of that, I end up having to drop off the kids and pick them up because she's kind of tied down. You can't necessarily there's a little bit, one of the cool things in academia is you have a little bit more flexibility with your hours and things like that. So you can do things like you just have a little bit more leeway. And you do definitely see at the drop off or at school, you see a lot more of the academic parents dropping them off. You tend to see that in this day and age. I know that years ago, so this was not kind of the norm usually, that there's still kind of it still exists. There is still kind of, maybe one parent goes to work in academia and the other one stays at home. There's still that happens a fair bit, and there's nothing wrong with it. First of all, I should admit that my mom was a homemaker, and it was a wonderful experience. I didn't go to pre-K or anything like that. Went to, the first time I went to school, I was in kindergarten, very scared. But I have absolutely nothing against that. Just a wonderful experience in either way that you sort of think about that. So that's the first thing, is just that it's really, really difficult to manage schedules and coordinating actions. But the one thing that we do that I think makes it a little bit more easier, and it's just kind of our personalities, I think. My wife does a little bit more of the coordinating of what's going on, and then that it just kind of makes things a little bit easier. We did that at the beginning of our marriage, where we're both trying to plan things at the same time, and it didn't work out nearly as well as just having one person that is kind of coordinating and then the other, just kind of relaying messages and stuff. So it just works out a lot better for me and for our relationship, because it just kind of smooths things over, right? So if you're dealing with that and you're going through kind of like relationship issues and stuff like that, just kind of take that as a grain of salt and maybe think about that and sort of evaluate the different roles that you have. That sometimes helps. And it helped me, it helped us tremendously with dealing with these kind of issues. The second thing and we generally have done this all the way through, is that we've tried to prioritize time for each other and for the family. So we always allocate some time on the weekend. Usually if I'm doing work, it will be, I'll just do work on a Saturday or something like that. But then we'll allocate, time for, maybe it's church or, just kind of hanging out. Usually our big holiday trip is going to Costco and going to Walmart to get our groceries, maybe in the South, they have this store called Publix, just getting our groceries and things like that. That's our big outing sometimes. And every once in a while we do something that's fun, like go to the beach or something maybe once a month or something like that. On the weekend, we'll go do something fun. But, it's important to allocate some time with each other as a relationship, because that's what life is all about, right? It's not just about doing work all the time. So if you are going through graduate school, just acknowledge that. The other thing that you should maybe try to explain to your significant other if you're going through these crunch times, because I know that there's crunch times that happen. Just try to explain that, okay, once this is done, we're gonna, hang out together for a while and get through this as much as we can. But, always allocate. You should probably, if you're doing this and you're married or you have a significant other and you're in graduate school, truly it's going to save your marriage. It's going to be really good for you just to allocate, a half a day or a quarter of a day once a week just to hang out and do something together. That's going to recharge your jets as together. And then you can, maybe on a Saturday you do 6 hours of reading or 8 hours of reading or whatever it is. And then the rest of the time you spend together. And then on Sunday, you do another couple of hours of reading and, doing some writing and things like that. And then the rest of the time you just kind of hang out together. So you want to prioritize time as much as you possibly can, because to be honest, it's a long endeavor. And if you kind of harm this relationship that you have and you have to find another relationship, you're still going to have to deal with that exact same thing going forward, right? It doesn't change. Maybe you can live by yourself, but that's, a lot of us don't like to live by themselves, and you have to kind of make these, you have to think it through, right? In terms of prioritizing time for each other. So, and especially with kids, once you start getting kids, or if you do get kids, it's something to think about, is prioritizing time. And you're almost forced to when you have kids, you are forced to when you have kids to prioritize time with them, because you can't go stick them with a sitter all the time, right? It's just not going to work out very well. The third thing is making sure you prioritize time for work when it needs to be done, but then don't use this as an excuse to do work all the time. That's what I personally have a tendency to do. I know a lot of other academics have a tendency to do that, or PhD students, because it's interesting. You kind of get sucked into that kind of thing, is that you're like, I just got to get this done. I got to get this done. But guess what? It's always like that. It doesn't go away. That feeling never goes away with the academic career or doing a PhD. You always want to get stuff done. And it took me a long time, and I still feel like this, but probably took me 4 or 5 years to get kind of deal with that issue, deal with that feeling as much as I can, because there's lots of ambiguity and uncertainty when you should be working, when you shouldn't be working. So just try to prioritize work when it needs to be done, but then don't let it happen all the time, right? So that's an important thing. So you have your your time that you spend with your family on a regular basis, but then every once in a while, if you say, I have to get this done, then your family will be okay with giving you that time. But if it's every day and all the time, then it's not going to happen very well, right? So that's important, to not prioritizing time for work every single weekend, because they're just not going to believe you, and it's not going to be very healthy for your relationship. So what are some advantage of a dual career? What's the advantage of being a dual career couple or family in academia? There's actually a lot of different advantages that once you kind of get used to it and you kind of deal with all these kind of issues. When you're a young couple, I'm now 38, still pretty young. But when I was younger, as younger couple, it was definitely more difficult to deal with. But now that it's kind of, things are kind of being normalizing at this moment, it's becoming a lot more fun, right? So first of all, what I'd like to point out is that although you might have to take sacrifices as in your career, or you might have to prioritize things in one particular career, or the other person has to do that. So in their single, as an individual person, they're not going to be nearly as productive as, just having maybe somebody helping them out on the side, right? Because that person helping them out, maybe they are a homemaker, for example, male or female, and they're staying at home with the kids. That's going to help you out tremendously, because then they can pick them up. They can make dinner for you, all that kind of stuff, right? Like there's a lot more that they do that you should really take credit for. That actually is a legitimate, amazing thing that they do if they're staying at home. But the one thing that you do realize, if you are both doing the dual career thing, even though one individual person is on their career, that's what I'm talking about, is productive, or if it was just you, but combined as a family unit, you're vastly much more productive in both of your careers, right? Because if you combine those two together, you're both sort of moving ahead and edging forward towards something that's a little bit bigger. Might take a little bit longer in each individual careers towards something that's a little bit bigger. So getting the assistant professor or associate professor or full professor or whatever, might take a little bit longer if you're doing that, right? It might take, maybe it's another position or something like that. But at the same time, as a family unit, you're definitely a lot more productive and farther ahead if you're able to do that and balance those kind of things. The other thing that is important, or that I find is important, it's a lot more. So for us, this is the reason why we both do the dual career thing, and it's not to say we're not saying one way or the other. But it's just, for us, it's a lot more exciting and it's different. And the reason why it's exciting is because it's different and we're constantly doing different things on a regular basis. So for me, my wife, for Lindsay, and, for my kids, we're always doing something different. So the kids are going to different summer camps. Maybe they do things differently at night. Maybe they are, we're constantly doing all sorts of different things. So during the day, we have this sort of, role here, but then at night we have this sort of parent role. And then it's just always, we're mixing things up. And sometimes it sort of mixes together. Like once in a while, I'll take my kids to work, right? Like a couple of times a year, you have to take your kids to work, and that's totally fine. It just makes things different, a little bit more exciting. And your day-to-day is, for us, it's pretty rewarding to do that, to do the dual career thing. The sort of third thing that I think people forget about, and I think this is really fun, and maybe it's only for us, maybe not everybody has this. If you're doing a dual career and you're working in the same offices, then that's okay, then you don't have this. But your social network gets a lot more bigger. So then, my wife has her friends and colleagues and stuff like that from work, and then I have mine. And then we always have stuff on the go and different kind of outings and obligations and stuff. So we have a lot more opportunities to do that kind of stuff. And then my kids, they have all their things, right? So we're constantly going in all sorts of directions, which makes it crazy, but also makes it a lot of fun. because you're meeting different people. It's not the same people all the time, and you just have this very large social network that is just a symptom. It's not because we're popular or anything like that in any sort of means, but it's just that it's a symptom of having multiple roles, and that's just kind of like a sociological fact, right? Like if you have different roles, you're just going to have more connections. And the more that you have all these different roles, the more connections you're going to get, right? It's just kind of like social networking, basic social network stuff. So that's all I wanted to talk about today. There are advantages and disadvantages with being a dual career couple in academia, and you just have to roll with the punches is the biggest thing that I'd like to point out. Is just be really flexible if you're thinking about, if you're a PhD student, for example, and you're trying to convince your significant other that you want to become a PhD student, for example, then you just have to really have a lot of conversations that this is going to be tough, but you have to be pretty flexible in what's going to happen in the next little bit. That's an important thing to think about. And over the next course of a couple of years, right? So you have to think about, okay, you have to sort of frame the problem is like what's best for us as a family and what gives us more flexibility as a family. And it's going to be rough for a series of years when you're maybe going into a doctoral program or in a certain area, doing a certain thing. Maybe you are having to fly back and forth, right? You're 2 assistant professors and you have to fly back and forth. It's going to be rough for a few years, but then you just keep working at it and trying to get co-locate at the same spot, or, you work and get through graduate school. Then it's going to hopefully be a little bit better in terms of that because it's just a lot more exciting with your life. And as long as you have that framing as this is a lot of excitement, then it doesn't get overwhelming. It does get overwhelming from time to time, but just know that you just got to roll with the punches and deal with that as like, just know that it happens and you get overwhelmed every once in a while, and that's normal. And just realize that there's a lot of other people that are doing the exact same thing. I think in this day and age, this is definitely, we're moving in that direction where more and more people are having the dual career and balancing dual careers, and it's just becoming the norm, right? So that's it. That's all I wanted to talk about. If you like this video, give me a thumbs up. I do appreciate it, and I'll try to do more like this if enough people like it. And do subscribe to the YouTube channel. I do appreciate it. All right, take care. Bye.